Have you ever had one of those games growing up where everybody would just go on and on about nonstop, but you couldn't really afford to play it because you were 5 years old and broke? Well, that was my original relationship with this motherfucker right here. Don't get me wrong, I got my fill of Spyro growing up. I played the GBA games as well as this abomination. And I even followed the Legend of Spyro games, but the only taste I ever got of the original trilogy was a demo disc for Spyro 1. That would all change forever in 2018, however, when this game was announced. After getting my hands on the Crash N. Sane trilogy, I was all for a trip through the realms of Spyro. And come November, I actually got one copy, and then the following September, 2 copies of this game. For this video, we're going to look at the Nintendo Switch version of the game, but don't worry, graphics snobs, I'll be busting out the PS4 when it's time to review Spyro 2 and 3. As for now, let's settle in and take a gander at the original, the one that started it all, Spyro the Dragon.
Okay, rolling.
Spyro the Dragon tells the story of the titular Purple Dragon as he sets out to free the dragons of the realm from the spell of Nasty Gnorc. Or is it, Gnasty Gnorc? Gnasty Gnorc is watching an interview with some of the elder dragons on the boob tube when all of a sudden they start throwing shade. My man Nasty doesn't take it too well and freezes all the dragons in crystal. All the dragons, that is, except for Spyro. Having survived the ordeal, Spyro sets out to set things straight and end Nasty's troublemaking once and for all. Can I just say I really like the opening cutscene in this game? The animation's just so bouncy and playful, and the sound direction is a million times better than the original. It's certainly packed full of charm. It's too bad we didn't get a lot more in terms of cutscenes. The next 2 games would remedy this, but after this, the next real cutscene isn't until the end of the game. It's fine. I mean, a lot of 3D platformers from this generation went in the same direction. The gameplay was always the main focus, and story was always more of like an afterthought. Plus, I mean, a big deal at the time with those radical 3D graphics, dude. As for the gameplay, Spyro is a 3D platformer that I would categorize as a collectathon, i.e. you're given a set amount of things that you need to collect in each level. Usually gems, dragons to set free, and dragon eggs. You don't have to collect everything to beat the game. In fact, the only thing you really are required to do is free the dragons, but you are going to want to collect everything in order to reach 100%, play the final level, and see the secret ending, which is totally worth it, by the way. Spyro himself is awesome to play as. Ability-wise, my dude can charge like a bull, glide over short distances, and of course breathe fire. You'll need all of Spyro's abilities to complete each level, as you have crates to break, enemies to kill, and thieves to chase. The thieves are one thing, but the game tasks you with paying attention to your enemies. Some are vulnerable to fire, while others you have to charge at in order to take them down. Screw that up and you'll take damage. At least your buddy Sparks has your back, working as your health meter and your gem tracker. If you want to stay alive, you need to keep him healthy, and the only way to do that is to get him some butterflies. Yummy yum yum. Getting back to controlling Spyro, oh man. I honestly can't tell you how much fun it is to play as Spyro in this game. The controls are just... It's like my hand and the controller are one, like I just melted into the damn thing. Never mind. I got Joy-Con drift again. At first, I wasn't the biggest fan of charging. I thought the camera was a little too close for comfort, which made it more difficult to keep track of things when turning tight corners. But over time, I got used to it and figured out exactly how to stay on track. The only thing I couldn't get used to were the flying levels. Levels where you have to fly on an obstacle course and are tasked with collecting or destroying items within a time limit. No sir, these were and are still not for me. No thank you. I think for these levels, they made Spyro's turning too tight, and as a result, I would spend at least 30 to 40 minutes trying to properly complete each one because I would repeatedly die or veer slightly off course, which would ultimately screw me out of time. I wouldn't say these are bad, but they are most definitely the weakest part of the game for me. But let's get back into some positives. The world of Spyro is crazy fun to explore. Every level is connected by a hub that serves as its own level to play through and complete, and every hub world has a theme that interconnects each level within it. It's quite amazing the amount of world building they put into this game, even without cutscenes. It's a shame they weren't able to capitalize on it more. I'm not complaining though, because it's still so cool to go through and explore, and it was at least explained in-game why you didn't have much of a population to interact with. I mean, my house would be barren too if everybody was turned into crystals. Plus, this would be remedied in later games, but more on that another time. It helps too that Spyro is gorgeous. Now this is no 4K on PS4 Pro, but the Switch version of Spyro 1 Reignited looks great. There were frame rate hiccups here and there, but the visuals are still clean, and the colors, man! Look how much everything pops! This is truly a cartoon world come to life, and it's quite amazing seeing how lively the world of Spyro really is. The soundtrack is pretty swell too, with Stuart Copeland, the original composer for Spyro the Dragon, returning for this as well. The game features a dynamic soundtrack, which basically makes the noises and sound effects Spyro makes sync up with the music. Like when Spyro charges, his footsteps become the drum beat for the song in the background. Now that's a nice touch. One thing I should note about this game is something I'm sure has come up before, but I want to mention it anyway. The motion blur. Now I know a lot of people hated this when it first came out, but it never really affected me or made me feel sick in any way. It definitely took some time to get used to, but I felt fine. Basically, all the motion blur does is make every frame rate look smoother. It's pretty subjective as to whether you'll like this or not. Either way, the developers eventually patched in the option to turn it off, so now nobody has to worry about it. But do be warned, when you first start the game, it will be on by default. Also, since after this video we'll be shifting over to the PS4, I thought this would be a good time to talk about specific aspects of owning the Switch version of this game. I'll start by saying this. If this port had come out when the game was first announced, it would most likely be the only port I own. Yes, the graphics aren't as nice, and previously mentioned motion blur isn't even available in handheld mode, but damn is it awesome to play this game on the go. Like I said, my first taste of Spyro was on the Game Boy Advance, so it's incredible to see how far we've come from playing a watered down isometric game on a tiny dark screen, to playing the full remade console experience on a handheld. Maybe I'm alone in thinking this, but I find it incredible. This is overall my favorite way to play the full trilogy, however there are benefits to getting the game for the Switch's more powerful brethren, which we'll go into at a later time. I just thought it'd be nice to fangirl over this for a second. Of course, not everything is all rainbows and butterflies with this one. Yeah, you heard me, Purple Boy. Your shit stinks just like everyone else's. The bosses are super easy and honestly, unfortunately, unforgettable. The first boss in particular is disappointing as it is so interesting in concept. It's basically a sheep in stilts, but all you have to do is chase it down, shoot some fire up its ass, and then wash, rinse, and repeat. This is the case for every boss except for one. This includes the final boss, which is the most disappointing of all. Spyro also lacks the ability to swim. I don't know if this is a lore thing with dragons or not, but in other games he can, so I don't know why he can't here. I mean, at least it's not insta-death when he hits the water, but still. Hey, it could be worse. You could be Gnasty Gnorc.
He is ugly. Ugly?!
I instantly fell in love with this game, which is really weird because I actually don't like a lot of the early 3D platformers. Crash was okay for me because it was essentially just a one-directional type of platformer, but games like Banjo-Kazooie didn't have a lot of appeal to me. Like, collectathons from that era just always felt so clunky, which made them way too time-consuming. Even Super Mario 64 is what I consider to be my least favorite 3D Mario. But I have warmed up to newer games in this genre as I feel they've aged better over time. Which might be why I like this remake so much. But honestly, I feel like I could just go back and play the original and still be just as satisfied. I don't know, maybe one day I'll get my hands on it and give it a go, but that's a long ways away, and for now I got plenty of other games that I really still want to cover. Like next time when I cover... Yeah, you heard me, Purple Boy. Your shit don't stink. Oh, wait.